How are you doing today?
Pretty good.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Michael, see us as per our usual. No, it's not, but I just wanted to make sure you knew so that the podium wasn't standing up here awkwardly empty. Oh, right.
George, is there a protocol about where people sit?
No.
In the chair, preferably.
I really wanted to lay down today.
I'll run it back.
No, those are the old ones.
Robert at the end about getting over from lunch.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that would be nice.
The BPAC is at, 5 o'clock with the TAC committee, which I'm also on, is at 4 o'clock. But I get most of a lot of people here are volunteers, so instead of like me, a voluntold.
Do they give us
I'm a volunteer, but I'm retired. So
There's one packet out there. There's the agendas out there.
The weather like this,
There are a bunch of agendas.
because it is hot, man.
it's only 106, 107.
Yeah, no kidding. Is it really that warm?
Yeah. That's what my weather app says. It's 106 and it's supposed to get to 107.
I'm showing 104 on my phone, but it's showing 105. It's cooling down.
It's cooling off, huh? I have AccuWeather and it's showing.
I like AccuWeather. I like
Oh,
AccuWeather.
it is. It's 105 now. It is
I like
going down.
AccuWeather because you can go back and get a really good history.
Yeah.
We might not even have a quorum if we can get a couple more people in here. It's humid in here.
In case I'm running late sometime. It is during dinner time. So you know Shane Rhodes, right? From Eugene. He was also, I thought his name used to be Mick Rhodes. He's an LCI. Ashley knows him. She says he's been to some of those conferences.
Okay.
So I'm hooking him up with Robert on White Counts.
I steal that chair, somebody's not gonna have a chair.
Ashley's coming up. You can tell Ashley to bring a chair. Ashley, bring a chair. You have your option. You can give it to Jess. Oh, Jess
Hello, how
went
are
for
you?
his own.
Good.
I was gonna have you give it to,
Do I need a phone book to sit on this?
I don't know, just use, swap it out and use the other one.
Yeah, somebody's gonna be sitting down low.
Let's see, Jess brings.
I can trade it out too.
So where'd you go, Ashley?
All over,
Aluba?
around and about. Well, I'm gonna just print it out for one that's not, require a phone book to sit on. These new chairs, these are fancy.
Sign already?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, it's now 5 o'clock.
Okay, we're at 5 o'clock, so I'm going to call this meeting of the Sea Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization Bicycle and Pedestrian Facilities Advisory Committee to order. If we could have a roll call to establish a quorum.
Sure. Ms. Curry,
Present?
Mr. Bicomo, Mr. Casillas, Ms. Davis, Mr. Wilcox,
Here.
Mr. Kirby, Mr. Love, and Mr. McGilvray, excuse me.
Here.
Okay. Mr. Baldamona?
Present.
Okay. Jess Waller?
Present.
And Mr. Chair.
Present. Thank you.
We have quorum.
Our next order of business is approval of the agenda. Do we have any comments, changes to the agenda? If not, I'll hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Ashley Curry, so moved.
Jim Wilcox seconded.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that's approved. Next is approval of the minutes of May 17th. Do we have any comments, discussion, changes for the minutes?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of corrections.
Go ahead.
On page 6, line 6, I believe what I'm reading here, there's a typo. It says completely blank, comma, S, that, something. Is that correct? Yeah, line 6, page 6.
I'm not looking at that. Can staff, do you see that?
Can people
Need a change?
confirm that for me? Page 6, line 6.
Good. Oh, it should be is instead of something else.
Right,
Should be just is,
right.
so
Okay.
typo there.
Typo there. And then on page 8, line 21, it says total lane millage, but I believe that's mileage. That's all the
That's
corrections I
fine. If you
have.
see that, that's. Okay, that's fine.
What line is that on, excuse me?
Page 8, line 21.
Okay. And the record can reflect that Mr. Bencomo and Mr. Casillas has joined us. Any other additions to the minutes? I'll hear a motion to approve the minutes with those amendments.
So moved.
That's
Ash-
Jess Waller.
Ashley Curry, second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as amended. All in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes. Next, we have public comment. This is the first of 2 opportunities for public comment. Do we have any member from the public that wishes to make any comments to us? Seeing none, we'll move on to action items. We have a tip amendment.
And at this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Dominic Lawyer.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So today we have the last set of tip amendments for the 2022 to 2027 Transportation Improvement Program. So there are 4 amendments, 3 are just adjustments, and then we will have 1 new project, which we will have Mr. Wayne Savage present on. So the first project to be changed is LC 00271. It's for federal fiscal year 2024. Lead agency is Nmdot. It's US 70 Phase 5 from milepost 149 to milepost 150. So this is the 1 mile, basically 1 mile section between El Camino Real and Elks Drive. This would be for bridge replacement, roadway reconstruction, pavement preservation, ADA and intersection improvements. This is for an increase of NHPP funds from by $3,420,381 for a total project cost of $16,620,382. And this will positively affect the PM2 targets, which are the state of good repair, for performance targets. So we then now have LC 00280. This is the new project for federal fiscal year 2023. Nmdot will be the lead agency. This is for the Arrowhead I-10 interchange study. It's a phase AB study. It is for $1.5 million, and this is all state money. It does not, the project will not affect the current performance measures. But as I said, this is all state money, but this also, the reason for this to be in the tip is that it is a regional project. We have LC 00290 for federal fiscal year 2023 and 2024. This is Nmdot-led project. It's the University Avenue multimodal project from Main Street to NM28 or Avenida de Mesilla. It is a multimodal and roadway improvement. So there are new funds being added to this project from the congestion mitigation and air quality for federal fiscal year 2023, and that will be $1,053,371. And then in federal fiscal year 2024, there will be added $2,907,840, and then there will be an increase in the NHPP funds to $9,069,116 with a match of $1,545,487 for a project total of $19,180,643. This project will positively affect performance measure 1, safety targets, and performance measure 2, state of good repair performance targets.
Excuse me, could you remind me the NHPP acronym? What's that?
The National Highway, I apologize, Mr. Chair, I forgot what the 2 Ps are for.
Maybe Harold knows.
Embarrassing, Mr. Chair. I don't remember either. It's National Highway Performance, Pavement Performance. Thank you. Mr. Lennon has saved us.
Okay, thank you.
And then we have LC 00380 for federal fiscal year 2023. Nmdot also led project. It's the I-25 capacity study from milepost 2.8 to milepost 10.5. And this is for capacity and safety study, phase 1 and phase 2. And it's an increase of $2 million for a total of $4,848,199. And this will not have effects on performance measures. Tonight, we are requesting the BPAC recommend approval to the policy committee for this series of tip amendments. And then now I will let Mr. Wayne Savage present on the Arrowhead Interchange.
See if we can find the slides here. Is it on the desktop here? Oh, never mind. I'll just take my hands off. There we go. So thank you, members of the committee, chair. It's good to meet you. Good to see you again. For those that I saw last time I was here speaking. I do manage the Arrowhead Research Park. My name is Wayne Savage. I'm a part of the Arrowhead Center organization, which is a function of New Mexico State University's economic development and entrepreneurship efforts. Slide, please. I can do this. So a little background on the Arrowhead I-10 interchange. And I pulled this from previous studies done by consultants as we've talked about this project before. But it was on a list from the MPO in 1991. And interestingly enough, it's the only project not complete from that list many years ago. It was also looked at then in more detail in 2007 and 2013 when the I-10, I-25 interchange was reworked and then built. And the interchange, and actually portions of the Arrowhead Drive I-10 interchange as it was envisioned at that time have already been built. And then in 2015, I'm sorry I left this off, but in 2015, we did an interstate access change request and worked that through the process, did not get to full federal highway approval, and that has expired. So we approached the Department of Transportation this last fall and again this spring about the next step, which we're proposing here. And the Mobility 2045 list of projects shows this in the 26 to 2035 timeframe. It's also consistent with the City of Las Cruces long-range plans, which call out Arrowhead Park as one of the key areas for job growth and investment for the future of the city. So it has a long track record. Really the reason I'm here is to share with you what we see happening with growth at Arrowhead Park in the next 5+ years. We've just completed an expansion for the Burrell College. It's allowed them to increase their enrollment, and they are off and running with that. We will be breaking ground in about 2 months on the new Doñana Community College Creative Media Technology building. And I am going to use the mouse to see if I can highlight where these are. The DACC building will be over here on the corner of Trevice, the Frontage Road, and a new roadway that we're constructing here that will be called Film Street. We have some existing EDA grant monies that are going to build Film Street and then a little bit farther to the north, Park Street, and put in the underground utilities there as well. So we're excited to see DACC coming on board as the newest member of the park. As we look ahead into 23 to the year 27, we see about 250,000 square feet of new construction valued at about $140 million that will bring 1,400 new jobs to the park. Currently, we have about 350 people that are employed and working in the park on a daily basis, and about 1,100 students there. But this will be an additional 1,400 jobs. There will be a Arrowhead Center building currently envisioned as a partnership with our Nmsu Foundation. That will be up here very close to where the Burrell College of Medicine is. That'll be about a 50,000 square foot building that'll also include 20,000 square feet of space for new tenants, new companies out there in the park. The CMI building is NMSU's Creative Media Institute. So this is continuing down the path of developing what we have termed our creative campus in the research park. So you'll see DACC's building along Trevize, and then next to that will be the Creative Media Institute, about a 70,000 square foot building. And next to that will also be a KRWG broadcast facility for the TV and radio stations. All these operations are moving off the main campus and out into the park. We'll be notified of an EDA grant award in August. We have our fingers crossed, but we feel very good about this. It is a statewide creative media initiative that is intended to create 10,000 new jobs statewide in the digital media industries. This is a project being led by partners out of Albuquerque, but we are the southern base. It will be a 50,000 square foot building, about a $20 million building. And it will have facilities there that we can not only use for classroom work, workforce training, research development, but also some facilities that we can lease to industry, some sound stages, small sound stages. But it'll be a place where industry and academics and workforce all come together, and we're very excited about that. Also in conversation with a clinical reference lab company about a facility that would be located closer to BCOM. So the next 4 to 5 years is going to be very active, both in construction as well as job growth. But beyond that, we see additional office facilities. We will have plans for, in this area, some mixed use and residential areas, multifamily. And the vision, the expectation is for an additional 2,000 to 3,000 jobs in the park area. And what this presents is a very critical concern for access to the park. Arrowhead Park was built to be an economic engine, to be a job creator and attractor, to raise the overall wages for our community. And we're on the path to do that. But in order to really, in order to fully realize the full build-out opportunity here and the job growth potential, access is going to be very key. This is an image that was done back in 2015 of one of the options of what the interchange might look like. You're looking from the north to the south at the I-10, I-25 interchange here and on to El Paso. We've spoken several times with the DOT, and they have agreed to go ahead and fund the Phase A-B study. DOT is currently working on an RFP to hire the consultant, and we're expecting that RFP will go out sometime later in August. It'll be about an 8 to 10 month project to complete the study, which will include public meetings. And then at the end of that, an alternative will be selected from the A-B study, and we will go forward to seek formal and final federal highway approval. So that's all I have. Appreciate the chance to present this to you and look forward to working with you in the process. Comments or questions?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that looks very impressive. On the main map that you had, the planning map, you showed some bikeways in there and such. Is there a good emphasis of dealing with the active transportation needs? Because you're talking about adding lots of jobs there.
Right.
You're within 3 miles or so of a good part of the city, which 3 miles is optimal for bicycle commuting. Relieves the need for as many parking needs and everything. So have you carefully looked at the active transportation needs while you're doing this planning?
Right. And I know that will also be looked at in further detail in the study. But when the university and I-25 interchange work that just completed just this last year, Trevice now comes all the way underneath University Avenue, and the multi-use path continues. It takes you down to Sisbaro Park. And in an award that was approved by the Department of Transportation, unfortunately, we don't see the funding until fiscal year 25, but we will be building a multi-use trail from the intersection of Wells and Arrowhead Drive, along Arrowhead Drive, fully throughout the park, that will then get to Sam Steele and turn back up to the Arroyo, to the Tortugas Arroyo. That's the current plan. The other developments for the park do include walkable areas, a lot of green spaces, and where we can, we're trying to encourage the developers and future tenants to build green spaces, buildings around green courtyards. But we expect to be able to provide that multi-use access from the north end to the south end and help begin to create that full loop from the east side of town around to the west side.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Okay.
This is Jim Wilcox. Do you have specific modeling that you use that applies to pedestrian and bicycle transportation so that you can model traffic patterns to develop your plans for?
I do not have those tools.
But are those tools available for motor vehicles?
Absolutely for motor vehicles. And in the last year, we've had a traffic impact analysis done because of the two roadways that we're building that
Right.
intersect with Trevice.
Do you find, I'm just kind of learning, so I can be more knowledgeable in advising. Do you find it difficult to make as an informed decision about those pedestrian and bicycle needs when you don't have the modeling available?
Well, as I've not had access to modeling for pedestrian and bicycle needs, I can't talk to how easy or difficult the process is. What I can tell you is that from the standpoint of development of Arrowhead and as a part of the main campus, it's certainly called out very clearly in my master plan document.
Okay.
And we intend to abide by those master plan guidelines.
One of the slides was LC 00290 is University Street, correct? It's going to be repaved, is that correct?
From South Main all the way to Mesilla, to Highway 28.
That's up the hill, going
That's
from
a little
south.
further that direction.
No, that's for Maine. That's the other, that's a whole different project.
Okay, I'm just double checking because I don't know
So
my
that's-
geography as well, so.
If we have any more questions for Mr. Savage.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We can ask that question.
Mr. Chair?
Just-
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Okay, it sounds fine, sure.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Andrew Bencomo.
okay.
So I like the concept here. I'm a big fan of roundabouts because they do allow access for active transportation to transition in and out of those intersections like they did up at where they went underneath University Avenue with Trevice, especially since there's bike lanes already on Arrowhead and they're going to put the multi-use through. There's a lot of opportunity to transition those not only around there, but even on the other side. Hopefully, even though there may not be on the, I'm talking the west side of I-25, even though there may not be access underneath. Am I seeing an access door that's going to go underneath there? From Arrowhead Drive under I-10 to the other side, or is that just
It's an overhead. It would go over I-10.
that's going to go over?
Yes, if you go back up from the traffic circle, the roundabout, just on the east side of I-10 there,
Okay.
go back up to the next intersection that cuts across Arrowhead Drive. That's a high point on Arrowhead Drive, and it currently slopes down to get to Sam Steele.
Right.
So the road would come approximately level straight across I-10 to the roundabout and then to the roundabout on the other
Okay,
side.
so then they would have to make transitions onto Sam Steele also there. So,
Yes.
which does give good opportunity to get active transportation over I-10 at that point. If we're at that point, if we can make
Yeah.
sure that that is part of the process, hopefully. Another question I have, so I'm looking at the access off of I-25 and then 10. Am I seeing that it's a separate access? You actually exit on the east side of campus and loop around by the renewable energy site and then down, or
The
that where it
prior
starts?
work that has been done on this, and as you're aware, there's an existing loop from I-25 south around I-10. The prior work that has looked at this interchange actually has a secondary loop that would then provide the access to the roundabout there and also merging onto the, to provide the access to that roundabout.
Okay, so would you, to access Arrowhead Drive on the west side of campus, would you actually exit on the east side of campus on I-25? Am I seeing that correct?
No, you would still be able to come through the I-10, I-25 interchange and then
Okay.
back to the Arrowhead interchange there.
Okay, I'm sorry. The other picture you had of
It's hard to tell.
concept. I don't know if you can go back to that other
Okay,
slide.
you said we're getting an A/B study on this. There's usually at least 2 rounds of public
Yes.
meetings with that, so that would be
Yes.
the time to talk about that.
Right. I will say that this was an earlier design that was done back in 2015. I found a roundabout solution that I liked even better about 3 weeks ago. So we'll
Right.
try to
Just-
include that in the concepts as well.
Just curious. Thought we were going to ask questions. All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, Jeff Swaller, Las Cruces, BPAC Committee. My questions are similar to Andrew's, and it looks like Cholla, you're going to put a stop, instead of going down and under I-10, it takes a left and goes into the park. It's popular with the Cholla's, popular with cyclists, and they just go down to Sam Still and take the Sam Still all the way down to Union or Stewart. I forget what it is.
Well-
On the southern end of campus. So I'm just trying to navigate my way through this complex.
Yes.
If I'm coming down Cholla
I hear
and
you.
trying to get to Sam Still. I just go through the campus. Is that the
Well,
current plan?
you would, in this design, you would still have from Cholla on the west side, you would have access to Sam Steele and be able to go Stern, I'm sorry, and be able to take Stern all the way to Union if you so choose. You would also be able to cut across the highway and get on Sam Steele.
Okay, so you can get to Stern.
Yes,
You can go into the Brit, but do you have to go through the roundabout to get to Stern in the
You
new
would take a
plan?
pass through the roundabout.
Okay, got
It's
it,
not a straight shot anymore.
got it.
But again, this is a preliminary design. There will be other public input opportunities. And I personally, I'm an advocate of keeping the Cholla underpass. And if not for cars, at least for bikes and pedestrians, because it is
Sure.
a popular way.
Because
for
people
to
do
pass through.
use that. I think they like Sam Still better because there's less traffic than Stern.
Right.
And the other thing is a lot of the bicycling events, some of them have the osteopathic Burrell School of Osteopathic Medicine. I think that's been a initiation point for bicycling events, and also the Arrowhead High School.
Yes.
That's also been I think the Tour of Las Cruces has used that.
Yes.
So we'll still have that capability to have bicycling events in this area.
I don't see it affecting events except, of course, during construction.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may, I just want to add that the DOT, as far as this study, will not only be looking at the proposed Arrowhead interchange, but the whole corridor from I-10 University all the way to I-10, I-25. And for the purpose of tying in all the multimodal stuff that's just been talked about, as well as any improvements that might be needed at the outer locations to make Arrowhead work the way it needs to.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to clarify, so these two roundabouts would kind of be at where Wells would currently intersect?
No, they would be where Arrowhead Drive curves, comes south and then curves to the west and intersects Sam Steele currently.
So if you were on the west side, it would be kind of Santa Drive and Tamarisk? On the other side to connect?
There's not currently, other than where Arrowhead Drive dead ends into Sam Steele right now, there's not currently a corresponding road on the other side. Cholla passes through a little further to the south.
Okay. So it isn't replacing, so is it between Choya and Wells then? Closer to the
Yes,
Choya side?
yes.
Okay. So I would just second your idea that you already had to keep Choya as a multi-use trail and then just have that access under for cyclists. I mean, if it's there anyway. Santa Fe did that with an old bypass that they had. They no longer needed it for traffic, and then they put a multi-use trail underneath it. So, you know, if you're looking for examples of what to do and how to do that, Santa Fe just did it.
I think it just adds functionality.
Yeah.
Helps tie other parts of the system together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
So on the university project, that's a project from Main Street to New Mexico 28. And that's one that we've gone through the AB study and gone through funding cycle, there's a long history. This project is what, 6 years old already? In the current rendition? So,
Well, Mr. Chair, I'm just a little confused. So is that the same that was discussed recently with improving the water facilities, and they're going to dig up the street to fix
no,
that?
not at all.
Whole different
That's way
thing.
further east.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox, this one is down by Mesilla Park, near Mesilla, by Zia Middle School. Near Spotted Dog, if you know it by the breweries.
Now you're giving me some landmarks, I understand.
So my other comment on this, I noticed the capacity study has doubled or tripled in funding since, I remember it starting as $1 million for funding for that, and now we're at over $4 million, and we haven't even started yet. So why is there the need for so much money for this capacity study?
I will defer that question to Mr. Love, or
I'm going to rely on Mr. Lenan, if he can, maybe he can address that.
Mr. Chair, member of the committee, Andreas Lenan, Nmdot. On this case, this is an extension, so these studies, when we have a phase 1, A, B, what is the initial evaluation, and then after preferred alternatives are selected, now we're going to go into formats of design. So additional service is going to be added to the project.
Okay, so you're going past the AB study with this funding?
With-
Okay, I didn't understand that. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And then from there, there's a phase 1C, phase 1D
Yeah,
preliminary
of course.
design, and phase 1-2 for final design. That leads us to construction.
You haven't had any public input on that yet, but my comment will be at some point, induced capacity, as you're building out things.
The public
For-
meeting falls under the phase 1C.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
So that's what's coming. That's what's going to be funded with the additional.
okay.
Any further question?
Any other questions from committee members? I'll hear a motion to
Thank you.
approve the tip amendments to the policy board.
So move, Harold Love.
Andrew Bencomo, second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend the tip amendments to the policy board. All in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed? Our next item is a discussion item, Frontage Road Bike Lane presentation.
And that will be from Nmdot and Mr. Gamaliel Zepeda.
Chair, committee members, good evening. Gamaliel Cepeda from New Mexico Department of Transportation. Today I'll be presenting the US 70 frontage roads bicycle lane inclusion, proposed inclusion. Next slide, we can go there. All right, so currently this project LC 00470, our letting date is 10/21/2022. Potential production will be happening at the end of August. Our current estimate is at 5.5 million, which includes currently the 15% contingency. Just a little quick overview. This LC 00470 project one portion of this project is the frontage roads, where we will be doing microsurfacing and mill and inlay portions throughout. Currently, the funding type source that we have is for minor preservation only, but it does include being able to restripe. It has funding for restriping. And as such, we, through Nmdot's bike plan recommendation, it's become it was called out as a tier 1 for potential inclusion. And as such, we would like to propose to include the bicycle lanes on these frontage roads. So the project itself is from Delray Boulevard to Nassau Road, milepost 150.7 to milepost 160.9. We show that it's split between what we call urban and rural. They have speeds of 35, 45 currently. You also see on here that we have seen, and I'll show you guys the data right now, for 2017, pre-pandemic was used for the AADT potential better representation pre-pandemic. But the AADT 2017 was 8,000 through to about 15,000. And the truck traffic ranges from 351 to 600. We'll see this on the next slide. So again, this comes from our traffic monitoring program up in Data Management Bureau up in Santa Fe. You can pretty much see right there on the image on the right, the frontage roads, again, green falls between 8,000 to 15,000 throughout the frontage roads, both eastbound and westbound. The truck traffic, it might be a little hard to see there, but I did want to show you that on the frontage roads, it's labeled as orange, which again, 351 to 600 truck traffic ranging throughout the frontage roads. The supporting policy and design guidelines used was the national and state statutes, AASHTO and FHWA guidelines, the U.S. Department of Transportation guidelines. Again, we consulted with the Nmdot traffic monitoring group, and we looked at the Nmdot bike plan. So currently, the existing urban side, we have both. We have 11-foot lanes for the inside and the outside lanes. We have currently a 3.5 shoulder, and we have a 1.5-foot concrete gutter. And throughout areas of the frontage road, we have, on the urban side, we have 5-foot sidewalks. On the rural side, we have also 11 for inside-outside lanes, and as well as a 3.5 shoulder with a 1.5 apron or concrete curb gutter. No sidewalk. Through FHWA and Nmdot's recommendations, specifically FHWA bicycle lanes, the minimum required is 4 feet for a bicycle lane on a non-parking or parking prohibited roadway, as long as no vehicles are allowed to park, which again on frontage road they are not. They have 4 feet minimum we can give them for bicycle. And then we can include the curb and gutter to give them 5 feet minimum bike lane. So currently, City of Las Cruces has some of these traffic patterns that we will be including. Shared path on the left, and on the right, the bicycle lane indicator with the bike symbol and the through arrow. And so we feel that the City of Las Cruces already, the community already is aware of some of these traffic patterns. So we wanted to include something similar. So the proposed changes for the US 70 frontage road. First, we'll be placing signage. On my next slide, you guys will see the signs we will be using. There'll be shared road concept on the on the rural side, and we would have the designated signs for bicycle lane on the urban side. Also on the urban side, we propose to reduce the outside driving lane on the eastbound and westbound frontage roads by 1/2 foot, which would make it an overall 10.5 foot for the urban section to convert that 3.5 foot existing shoulder to a 4 foot, along with the curb and gutter. They would have a total of 5.5 feet bicycle lane as per FHWA recommendation. And this again from Delray to Porter. On the rural side, we will remove the outer shoulder stripe to merge outside driving lane with shoulder, allowing for a 14.5 foot shared between motorized vehicle and bicycle in the rural section. And this is again from Porter to Nassau Road. And finally, throughout, we will be placing bike symbols, through arrows in the urban section, chevron arrows on the rural section, on the pavement surface. So these are the signs that we'll be using. Again, these are signs that the community is already familiar with. So again, on the urban side, they'll have the bike lane with both telling them begins and ends accordingly. And on the rural side, share the road concept signage. So again, this is just how it'll look. Proposed typical section on the urban. You see here we have 11 on the inside lane and 10.5 on the outside lane next to the 4 foot new shoulder. And again, at the 5.5 foot with the curb and gutter. On the rural side, they shared the road concept where we'll drop or remove the outside lane separating stripe and combine them to make a 14.5 shared lane and a 16 foot with the curb and gutter. And these are the type of symbols that we'd be using for the urban side and rural section. Again, symbols that the community currently, City of Las Cruces, is used to or have seen. So when we also come into the intersections, specifically on the urban side, we will have a bike lane ends shoulder, where then it would merge and become a shared road concept right before the intersections. And we're open for questions.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, one of my concerns that I've expressed before is addressed by that last slide, where there's examples where the shoulder line goes all the way up to the intersection, so the bicyclist then is to the right of a right-turning vehicle. So this makes it clear that bicyclists should pick their lane, whether if they're going straight through, they should probably move over a little bit more to the left to own that lane.
Correct.
I guess my other, not being an engineer, but I think my preference would be in the rural side that you continue with the bike lane. Continue the same, what you're using in the urban all the way through the project. Lacking the line there that delineates where bicycles are expected. Vehicle drivers will just think they own the whole lane. So that's something that I guess I'd like you to look at again.
On that rural side, we see that there's a lot less traffic, right? And that there's just completely less amount of vehicles out on that rural side from Porter on. And as such, we feel that, if there's no vehicles, they'll be able to use that lane, the full lane.
My input is that I think having a lane there, delineating the bike lane would be safer for bicyclists. My experience, even on Traverse, when they did that piece, when they added the bike lane on Traverse, which is way too narrow, it's probably a 3-foot bike lane, that made it so much safer to ride a bicycle on that than before, when it was probably a 14-foot lane or something. And Traverse and that are closer to University, it actually gets narrower as they get closer to University. But my experience after the city put in the shoulder lane there, which gave room for bicyclists, made it so much safer because vehicle drivers seem to anticipate that, yes, bikes do belong there. That's just my personal, that's anecdotal, so not an
Mr.
engineering
Chair?
opinion, but.
Mr. Chair, I would also like to corroborate the same point. I've ridden that road many a time, and even when there was, back in the day, when you had the stripe demarcating where the cars go versus bicycles, there were altercations between cars and bicycles requiring people to call 911. And I think it would behoove us to keep the stripe to demarcate where the bicycles go versus the cars go and not get rid of that. That would be my recommendation.
Mr. Chair, may I weigh in as well?
Yes, please.
Just a quick Google search here, and I think, obviously need a little bit more time reading the FHWA, the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and then also this search also just points to NACTO, and it just says that sharrows should never be used at more than 35 miles per hour, so looking at 45, and looking at the rate of survivability at increased speed, I would also say putting in the separated actual bike lanes are very much in order, and I think that's following, NACTO and the MUTCD as well. And this is the quote from the Urban Bikeway Design Guide put out by NACTO, so this is a quote, shared lane marking should not be considered a substitute for bike lanes, cycle tracks, or other separation treatments where these types of facilities are otherwise warranted or space permits. So I would second the opinion just to continue what you've already done in the urban side and just continue those bike lanes all the way up.
Mr. Chair, may I add something?
Go ahead.
This is Jim Wilcox. What I've noticed since I've moved out here is how ubiquitous is the signs for share the road. And I really had always kind of assumed that motorists thought that meant share the road with them. But when I was riding fairly to the right, a person drove by me and yelled, "Share the road." And I realized that they had a different interpretation. So I read from a website that says, some motorists believe that the sign is directed towards bicyclists, informing bicyclists of the duty to share the lane with the lane space with motorists. So it depends on your perspective. You're riding down on your bicycle, you think, well, that's telling the motorists to share the road. When you're in your car, you're thinking, yeah, that's telling the bicyclists to share the road. So I would really, I suggest that be not an option, actually. I think that we've gotten into the mindset that somehow we've done something. It may be the law of unintended consequences. Some motorists may correctly interpret it. Others may think it's justified to harass cyclists who they don't think have moved over far enough.
Mr. Chair. Andrew Bencomo.
Okay. Andrew.
I would agree with that. I'm having the bike lane is safer. I mean, sharrows and marking the roadways, if we can get a bike lane, is great. But if they're doing bike lanes up to a certain point, why would that not just be continued? What was the decision making in only going to a certain point and then stopping?
Separating the rural and the urban side from one or the other.
The rural and urban?
Correct. Are we giving more?
Separating it for who? For our perception as cyclists or as motorists or how?
No. That's just how, according how we have it right now with our pretty much how the road itself is
That's
constructed.
just the typical way you do it?
So what,
Okay, okay.
the other thing is, the way you're distinguishing the urban from the rural is a speed limit change, is that right? So you're going up to 45 miles an hour, which now makes it more dangerous for bicyclists, but you're making a more dangerous facility by not having the dedicated bike lane. So I think you probably heard us that we don't like that. And the other question is, did you look at the NACDO design standards for this?
No, so we read all through FHWA, all the requirements for Nmdot, so we.
Okay,
meaning the
well, I remember
minimum
discussion that
requirements.
NACDO was accepted by Nmdot to be usable, so you might just look at, especially for the intersection treatments, on how NACDO might treat that.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair, I wasn't,
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Mr. Bencomo still had more to add.
Oh, okay, I'm
so
sorry.
just another comment. So the treatments where they're going to put, whether it's a bike lane or a sharrow, whatever the decision is, I prefer the bike lane, but whatever the decision is, the treatments where they're going to put the little bicyclist symbol or the sharrows, because you cited the city of Las Cruces starting to use those same symbols, which is great. Standardizing is wonderful. But the city is also starting to use green paint boxes around those symbols and things. Can that be done? Also, that gives them, motorists, a real clear cue that bicyclists belong there. So
Yeah,
could that be done?
According to, again, the funding source that we are be using for this minor preservation for striping, that green paint will not be able to be used according to this funding source.
Is
So-
that just a lack of funds, or what do you mean according to the funding source?
So the funding source is specifically for minor preservation, but it allows for us to restripe.
Okay.
And so at this point in time, we can restripe and either restripe or remove that, like we did with that shared concept. But there's not currently for that funding source, like a green paint kind of, that would be allowed. That would be having to do something completely different.
Okay, so you can do the symbols of the bicyclist riding, but you can't put paint around it?
Unfortunately.
Wow, okay.
Okay,
Mr. Chair?
go ahead.
Is it possible for us to get a statement from your funding source saying that they have explicitly prohibited that option?
I mean, maybe I can definitely try and bring it up and see if we can.
I would advise that, not that I disagree with what you're saying, that you're not being honest or anything, then we would have it on record that we have considered that, and the funding source specifically documented that they would not be able to fund that. And that way, your statement here would be backed up.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, there's a chance for me to follow up on that.
Please come up to the,
Mr. Chair, Member Bill Cox, Andreas Lanen, Nmdot. So the current funding that is used is earmarked for minor pavement preservation. What this allows us as a department is to utilize federal funds to do crack seal, fog seal, microsurfacing, and thin milling inlays. It's the earmark.
so as you do that,
Since we are
the current
removing-
striping goes away, right?
Since we are removing existing striping during the process, we are allowed to use this type of funding to recreate the removed type of pavement markings. The request for what we like to, the differentiation of pavements in form of color, I apologize. It would be possible for future advancement. It would be really nice to see the city, the state, some partnership coming together, guided by the MPO or this committee, to build this out. But currently, that is the earmark for this specific type of funds that we received to do minor pavement preservation, and for us to include the concept of the bike lanes is, we understand we have to approve. This is what we can propose at this point with the money we have.
This is Jim Wilcox, and I appreciate that more elaborate answer. And what I'm hearing from that is that it's replacement and adding green would be enhancement, and that's not allowed. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
So I hope that, because it sounds a little bit, well, we can do this, but not, that's exactly what the case is.
Mr. Chair, sorry, another comment. So thank you for that explanation. That makes it very clear to me, and I understand how the funds in these kind of projects have to be used. So then I would make the comment then for future projects, things like that, trying to combine some fundings from other places and keep those things in mind. Is there a way to, this funding is for that, but do we have some other funding that we could use while you're, just like when the city does a project and they say, you know, we're going to wait to do the pavement on this road until we have the funding to also do the utilities, and then we can kind of combine them together. So maybe keeping that in mind in the future, we can put those projects together with funding to do it all at once. Because what's going to happen is they're going to be redone. We're thinking about maybe in the future we could do that green paint or something like that, and it's never going to happen. Or it's going to be 10 years from now before it happens. So just to maybe keep that in mind as projects are put forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. That was very helpful. Our next is the bylaw draft presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Andrew Ray for MPO staff. I'm going to go ahead and present on the bylaws this evening. While we're waiting for the PowerPoint to come up, I do want to thank the members of the bylaws subcommittee who are here with us tonight, Mr. Chair and Ms. Curry. I also want to extend a special thank you to Ms. Curry for going above and beyond the call of duty and securing a facility for us to have the meeting and providing cookies, which were definitely very appreciated by all and sundry. As everybody is aware, we've been talking about this basically since the start of the year, that with the adoption of the new JPA, we needed to bring some new bylaws on board to address some of the changes and also to work on some items of interest that had come up historically, things that we realized that needed to be improved, weren't working very well, things of that nature. So earlier this year, the policy board appointed a bylaws subcommittee to handle the drafting of the bylaws document. That subcommittee met on May 25th, and due to some of the changes, which we will go into some detail on during this presentation, it was necessary to submit those bylaws for review by the Las Cruces city manager, as the city is the administrative and fiscal agent for this MPO. The city manager at the meeting that I had with him in June concurred with the proposed draft, and so we are now having our first public unveiling, ta-da, of the bylaws here for the BPAC tonight. And basically, I'm just going to run through in order of the changes throughout the document from top to bottom. So at the very beginning, we did include a new definition section within the document, kind of expanding and explaining a number of the terms and acronyms that are used in the document. Of note, the composition of the policy board does remain the same. There will be three Las Cruces city councilors, 3 Doñana County commissioners, 3 Town of Mesilla trustees, and the Nmdot District 1 engineer as the voting members of the MPO policy board. The officers of the board, the chair, vice chair, and executive secretary remain the same. However, and this is something that I'm going to be harping on when I make this presentation of the policy board next month. Over the course of time, the role of the MPO chair has grown and changed. And some of the things that are in the bylaws with regard to the MPO chair role are basically a codification of how things have developed over the past 3 years. And the significance of the MPO chair role is only going to continue to expand over the course of time. And lastly, the proxy provision is also clarified within the bylaws draft for all of the committees. Quorum for policy board remains the same. It is 5 with a mandatory representative from each one of the political jurisdictions. No offense to Nmdot, but it's whether they're actually there or not. We do continue to maintain the telephonic restrictions that are in the current bylaws. There was a lot of discussion among the subcommittee about this particular provision. There's been work behind the scenes over the course of the past 2 years, ever since the COVID pandemic came about. With regard to those provisions, we did make an amendment to allow emergency telephonic meetings, which was necessitated by the year that we all had to be behind closed doors. But as it stands now, the consensus is that the current version of only allowing one member to participate telephonically per meeting is going to have to be maintained for the foreseeable future. A little bit embarrassingly for us, we were chastised by the city attorney's office because we were allowing improper voting within our bylaws for the policy board. For resolutions, we are only allowed to do roll calls rather than by acclamation. Now, de facto, that had always been the way that we'd handled it, but we got swatted on the wrist, so we have fixed that particular problem in there. Other than that, broadly speaking, the policy board remained relatively untouched by the proposed changes within the draft. Now, for the Technical Advisory Committee, things change rather substantially for the TAC in some respects. And most notably, those changes revolve around membership of the TAC. Specifically, the City of Las Cruces, Doñana County, and the Town of Mesilla must appoint a director, deputy director, or equivalent level of authority because the different jurisdictions do have different sort of hierarchical schemes. But it must be an authoritative voice to speak on behalf of those jurisdictions at the Technical Advisory Committee level. This is intended to improve the level of engagement by the political jurisdictions in the MPO process. We've periodically kind of go through ebbs and flows where communication can break down with some of the member jurisdictions where they don't have authoritative enough voices to speak on behalf of the jurisdiction, or is having to relay things up their chain of command, which frequently breaks down. And we've had some issues just within the past 2 years experiencing the consequences of those communication breakdowns. And so the subcommittee and MPO staff felt that this was a necessary change to sort of not only raise the stature of the committee, but also make the committee more effective in its intended role. Other than that, while that is a very significant change, as far as the administrative and procedural matters for the TAC, those remain the same. Quorum is the same. Officers for the committee remain the same. And then BPAC of all the committees is actually probably impacted the least. The most notable textual change that you will notice if you compare the current bylaws to the draft is that we clarify and codify the appointment procedure for both the citizen and the technical membership of the TAC. But we felt it was, especially given the fact that we just had a vacancy that we filled, the feeling of the subcommittee and staff was that we needed to go ahead and write down explicitly step by step what the procedure for filling vacancies on the BPAC is. We also beef up the role of the committees, the kind of the committee process via these bylaws. It's always been kind of unwritten rules as far as what has to go through the committee process versus what does not. And so we went ahead and codified that, clarified it, basically made it explicit. This, and this has to go before all three of the committees. There's no exception to be made for that for most things. In fact, the only listed exception within the document itself does pertain to BPAC in that we never have historically, and it would be pointless for us to start doing it, is we don't bring the annual listing of obligated projects before the BPAC. That's an annual financial expenditure report that the BPAC doesn't have any a portfolio or really ability to impact in any way. The one we did, given the experience of the past 2 years, though, we do realize that emergency circumstances can and do come about. So in addition to the responsibilities already elaborated, one of the more significant changes for the MPO chair role is we are giving the MPO chair the prerogative to grant permission to bypass the usual MPO committee process. We do intend for this to be a rare occurrence. We do give the MPO officer the ability to not block requests for bypassing, but to weigh in and give an opinion as to whether or not the bypass is justified. So we're trying to, we emphasize in the language in the draft that this is intended to be rare emergency circumstances only, and we also give staff the ability to kind of provide some checks and balances in that. I will say, though, that this is not bypassing approval. I do want to clarify that. The board is the only one who can approve, and if the board does not approve something, then it is not approved. This is only allowing bypassing of the advisory committees to still be reviewed by the board. So that is, we did have some, when I was speaking with some of our, I guess, editors, that was just a question that came up. So I do want to make sure and clarify this is in no way bypassing approval. This is only allowing the board to consider. Now getting on to kind of some of the more difficult, awkward aspects of the new bylaws, but the MPO Policy Board is required to adopt an Open Meetings Act compliance resolution on an annual basis, and in consultation with the City Legal Department, it was determined that it's advisable that we put in a penalty of removal for the committee, from a committee or a board for violations of the Open Meetings Act. There is a due process that is described in some detail in the bylaws. I'm not going to review that in detail at this time, but ultimately expulsion from either the board itself or from an advisory committee is determined by the policy board. We did, and the city legal actually thought that we were kind of crazy for doing this, but we did in fact loosen the attendance requirements for the board and committee members. There is a set number of allowable absences based on the number of meetings per year. So you'll notice that TAC actually has an extra absence that they're allowed. That's because they meet one more time than the policy board and 3 more times than the BPAC during the regular calendar year. I mentioned earlier about the proxy provision. We do clarify that, kind of delineate it a bit better, and also to not give specifically designated members of a board and committee just sort of a permanent out to never show up to meetings. We do cap the number of times that proxies can be used and not count as an absence at 3 times per year. But still, we are still being generous and we are loosening the attendance requirements. So please do not stab us in the back on this one, because we do have to have meetings, we have to have quorum, we have to be able to work. However, we are also explicitly giving ourselves more of a stick with regards to monitoring and policing absences. Excessive absences, which is defined as missing more meetings than is allowable within the defined parameters of the bylaws, that individual would lose their voting rights. And that goes for members of the board and members of the advisory committee. That is not something that is subject to review by the board. That's something that's done administratively by MPO staff. It's something that happens automatically if a member goes into default on the attendance provisions. However, again, trying to make this as relatively easy and livable for everybody, ourselves included, voting rights can easily be restored. It will just require a meeting by that defaulting member with MPO staff. So you could default. Let's pick on policy board because they're not here. You could default on a Wednesday from a policy board meeting, meet with MPO staff on Thursday, and have your voting rights restored by that Friday, well in advance of the next month's policy board meeting, just as a scenario. However, if the member does not meet with MPO staff for a calendar year period from the time that they default, or if they accumulate 3 different instances of losing their voting rights, and there's no way to sort of expunge the record on that, then that member then becomes eligible for removal from the board or committee. And it would follow a similar process to the other removal process. We also, again, this was at the advice of the City of Las Cruces' attorney's office, but There is provision in the bylaws for removal of board or advisory committee members who, in some sense or other, make a public nuisance of themselves. They bring the MPO into disrepute. They have some act of wanton and notorious criminal conduct that they engage on out in the middle of the street. Someday, we do want to be able to remove that person immediately when they're incarcerated and obviously not going to be attending meetings for some considerable period of time. We don't want to have to wait the full year before expelling that member. So at the advice of the city attorney's office, we did go ahead and add other malfeasance to be hopefully never utilized, but we did agree with the city attorney that it was a good idea to add that in there. Any member that is removed from any one of the MPO boards or committees for whatever reason is ineligible to be reappointed by whatever appointing authority appointed them in the first place for a period of 1 year. Obviously, things are going to change as time passes, so we do have a bylaws amendment process. It's not necessarily going to be as elaborate. We think that we have done a pretty good job, patting ourselves on the back, but we think we've done a pretty good job with these bylaws. So we're hoping, it's not intended that future amendment processes are going to be as intensive as this one has been, and bylaws may be amended by a majority vote by the policy board. And also slightly embarrassingly, this MPO has actually been operating for several decades without a specifically designated parliamentary authority. We had always assumed that Robert's Rules of Order was it, and in the first couple of versions of the MPO bylaws, it was listed, and then for some reason it mysteriously disappeared. And so we are explicitly designating Robert's Rules of Order as the parliamentary authority of the MPO, except in legal speak, as otherwise specified by these bylaws. And lastly, all members of the MPO Policy Board and the advisory committees are required to abide by the City of Las Cruces Code of Ethics. MPO staff is going to bring back the draft of the bylaws to the BPAC for action at the August the 16th meeting. The current plan is that we will present the bylaws to the Policy Board for final approval at their September 14th meeting. After consultation among the subcommittee and with the city manager's office, the agreement is that these bylaws, should they be adopted, will go into effect on January the 1st of 2023. And that concludes my presentation, and I will stand now for any questions.
Okay, I had just a couple of questions. There are a couple of references where, when talking about the proxy member, or about the appointment procedure, it's a written notification or provided in writing. Does that mean email also, and does that need to be more explicitly stated? I think we had this discussion.
We have, and I can't say that we necessarily made a specific decision about that. We'll go back and we will add in email suffices as written notification, because practically speaking, many times when someone has to be absent, they find out just a couple hours beforehand. Right. So obviously,
yeah,
and I mean,
practice
in this digital age, email should count, but we will go ahead and make that explicit.
More of if it's written in the bylaws as written, what does that really mean?
Yeah,
we will. The lawyers come up and start fighting with you. But
yeah,
anyways.
yeah, and we've had too many encounters with lawyers recently anyway. So we will clarify that as email is allowable.
There's a section on the committees and the executive subcommittee. I don't think we talked about this. And what is the executive subcommittee, and how does the public know who it's a policy board member?
Yes, Mr. Actually, we did talk about this briefly at the May 25th meeting. It did come up mainly in staff covering our faces in shame and going mea culpa, because the executive committee has actually always existed within the bylaws. We have just never gone to the bother of appointing it. Starting on January 1st, 2023, we are actually going to be appointing the executive committee. There is no executive committee of record as it stands right now. There should be, but we just historically have never gone to the bother. And now all of a sudden over the past couple of years, we've discovered needs for that, and we've just never done it. So now we are going to.
Under the new bylaws, it'll be part of the public record.
Yes. Yes.
The policy board.
Yes, it's going to be voted on. It'll be one of one of the rapidly accumulating number of routine items that the policy board's going to have to do at their January meeting.
Okay, and the other last comment is more of a suggestion related to attendance. MPO staff shall be responsible for tracking the attendance of all members. What came to me is on the sign-in sheet, you just should add a couple of columns that you keep track of who's been absent and who's used a proxy, and then everybody can see what their status is. So if we start seeing staff tracks it on the sign-in sheet, then everybody that's a member would be aware of when those issues are coming up.
That's a good suggestion, Mr. Chair. We will probably modify the sign-in sheets once this goes into effect to incorporate just that information.
Okay, my last comment has to do, the new bylaws talk about, we're covered under the City of Las Cruces ethics procedure, and the city has an ethics document. I'm a member of 2 boards. I've seen it twice already. I'm just wondering, as new members are appointed to any of the boards or committees, maybe they should also receive a copy of that document.
That is something that we are going to start doing for all of the new members. We had not done it in the past because it was, again, this was something that came out of extended conversations with CLC Legal reviewing, and it was just not something that we had really given any thought to, but it is something that will be incorporated going forward.
Okay. Any other committee members have questions?
Mr. Chair, I do.
Go ahead.
It's Ashley Curry for the record. So I just to clarify, the attendance is not a rolling 12-month year, but a calendar year. So theoretically,
Yes.
somebody could miss October, November, December, January, February, and March and still be in compliance.
Yes, there's no way to structure this in such a manner as to prevent all gaming of the system. So
Sure.
let's make it easy.
No, I wanted to clarify that. The other thing that we did talk about at the May 25th meeting was making LCPS a member of the BPAC or having that line item appointment. And I think that, if NMSU is there, having 46 schools and entities having an active interest in pedestrian and bike activity, I think it would be good to delineate out LCPS. I know that it makes your numbers 10 instead of 9. It makes an even number. So my suggestion...
No, currently it's 11, so it'd be 12.
Okay, wait, 11 to 12. Okay, my apologies. The other thought was, since we now have an active transportation position at the city, it seems like it would make sense to have the active transportation position be also a required seat at the BPAC.
I'll answer the first question first. The consensus of the subcommittee and the MPO chair subsequent is we're going to handle the LCPS issue post these bylaws going into effect. We're not going to deal with that issue right now as part of this revision process, but the board can add new members, so that can be a January or February agenda item for the policy board to add that other vote. There are a couple of concerns with regard to the active transportation coordinator, and Mr. Messenger is here, so I don't want to act like I'm talking like he's not able to hear what I'm saying. But there are some concerns. We do not want to unbalance the committee and give the city 2 votes, whereas nobody else has more than 1, because we believe that would end up being a concern at some point on some level. But on the other hand, we also have issues of we can't constrain the ability of the city manager, because I will open the curtain a little bit. That is a concern that Mr. Peely has expressed with regards to MPO matters in the past, of feeling too constrained in his ability to act in what he believes to be the best interests of the city of Las Cruces, which by city charter he is charged with. So I would say that kind of a dialogue probably would need to happen directly between interested parties and the city of Las Cruces administration. MPO staff would not take a role in that conversation. That, again, we as staff in our formal position need to be respectful of the stature and the standing that the city charter gives the city manager to be the oversight and controlling authority of city staff. So that's kind of a long-winded explanation of that.
Okay.
But that's the motivation. That's what's going on there.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Andrew Bencomo, a couple of questions. So maybe I missed it in here when I read through. When I miss my fourth meeting, which I'm not going to do, how long do I lose my voting rights for? It doesn't say what do I need to do to get them back?
You just need to meet with MPO staff. I mean, you could miss, let's say you missed tonight and this was your one, you could miss tonight, meet with us tomorrow, have your voting rights restored by Thursday. I mean, it's literally, we needed to have consequences, but we wanted to make them as easy as we possibly could, while still kind of ensuring compliance.
All right. As far as the code of ethics, I agree that anytime a new member comes on, that code of ethics should be there. When I joined, I don't remember how years ago it was, I never read that. I've read them previously when I was a city employee, but not recently. So maybe something that needs to happen is maybe just at a future meeting, or maybe we just need to read them again as a whole group just to make that a part of a future meeting so that we're all up to date. And then from that point forward, anybody new.
We can, Mr. Chair, Mr. McCollum, we can do, that's a good suggestion, to do a code of ethics training. I think staff will try initially to have the Las Cruces City Attorney's Office do that presentation, as I think they would be the most appropriate voice to give that. However, I do have to say that the Attorney's Office right now is badly hurting for staff. They're in fact down to only 2 attorneys and a handful of paralegals with a more than usual caseload against them. So if worse comes to worse, MPO staff will give at least an overview, but my preference would be to kind of have the most competent authority give that presentation. So we will try to do that first.
I seem to remember that we were going to have a yearly open meetings education, so maybe the ethics could be.
We could roll that together. Yeah, we could roll that together.
It's a good idea. One more comment, sorry. So as far as the active transportation coordinator being part of the BPAC, I get the point of 2-vote type of thing. Perhaps in our regular agenda, maybe that position could be added in there as a regular report at the end where we have the local projects, Nmdot, MPO staff. Maybe the active transportation coordinator gets his own spot there so that they are at every meeting, they give a report at every meeting, at least they have that kind of input. I know Mr. Messenger has always attended the meetings, which is great, but maybe adding that in there is a little bit of a step towards that.
Mr. Chair, Mr. McCollum, we could do that. Historically, that would kind of always fall under the rubric of local projects update, but I guess the city could decide how they wanted to handle giving their updates. So I don't know. It's a suggestion to mull over, I guess. But in a way, I kind of think that's already been handled because we should be getting that as part of the local projects. So what we could do, because for TAC, on that line item on the agendas, I know Ms. Curry and Mr. Love are members of the TAC, so they've seen this. All of the member jurisdictions are specifically itemized out on that line item. So we might start doing that for BPAC and just list everybody.
Okay, because what I've seen is with the local project update, it's typically coming from the dais, from the gentleman over there that gives the city update. Mr. Messenger typically comes up and gives public comment. So I think that's a little different because of the position he's in. But anyway, I think as long as his voice is here, either way, but thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes, Mr. Chair. This is Jim Wilcox. Can you, I don't know the details on what I would call the emergency bypass clause. Is that specified what it constitutes an emergency within a certain parameter that would allow guidance?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox, yes, there is. And it is defined as something that will cause an immediate and irreparable harm, obviously financial is what we're talking about here, to one of the member jurisdictions or the MPO as a whole, which has happened. It's happened earlier this year. It happened last year where we did have an emergency. That's kind of how the protocol that's spelled out in the draft of the bylaws was kind of put together, and we're codifying that now. But yes, emergency is defined and the parameters are spelled out.
Great, thank you.
Okay. See no other committee member comments? Thank you. We'll move on to MTP amendment public comment period.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to introduce Mr. Dominic Loya.
Good evening again, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. We will be, when the PowerPoint comes up, we'll be discussing a MT2 amendment to the truck routes map. Alrighty, so we've received a request from the City of Las Cruces to update the Mobility 2045 truck routes map. The requests are to remove Melendez Street from South Main to El Molino, removal of Brown Road from Compress to South Main, and then add in the addition of El Molino from Compress to Melendez. So this is the truck route maps as it stands right now. The area we are looking at is basically right here. I'm sorry. This area right here, this little corner. And we'll zoom in on it. So this is the truck route map as it stands right now. We have Melendez runs here from Amador to South Main. We have Brown Road that runs from South Main all the way over to Valley. So the City of Las Cruces has proposed the removal of Brown Road, as you can see here, from Compress to South Main, and Melendez from South Main to, this is El Molino right here. This is the proposed addition to add in El Molino to connect Melendez to Compress. So this is what the map would look like after the proposed changes. So, and this is how we define trucks. They are basically anything that has 6 wheels or more. So as you can see right here, it can be delivery trucks as well as any type of semi. Going up, it does not include buses or anything like that. So here we're looking at the truck traffic from the most recent data that we have on these streets. So on Melendez here, from El Molino to Amador, you can see we do have 10%. So that is the area that's proposed to be left in. Then from Main to El Molino, it is only 3.21% of the total ADT. And then on Brown Road, from Valley to Melendez, is very small, it's only 0.88%. And then this is along South Main Street from Idaho to Wyatt. There's only 4.82% of the traffic is trucks. So what we're doing now, we are opening a 30-day public comment period as is required by the public participation plan. It will be open until August 16th. It'll be a discussion item for TAC on August 4th, and then the policy board on August 10th. Then we'll bring it back to the BPAC for action on the 16th, to TAC on September 1st, and for policy board action on September 14th. I'll now stand for questions.
Can you put up the last map?
Which slide?
Put up the last map. Previous one,
Previous one?
the map.
The map? All right.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
so why do we need Melendez and El Molino anyways? I'm trying, because some part of this, off of Main Street, there's a no trucks already. Maybe go to the one that shows the current ones.
The current lines?
Just, yeah,
1 second.
the first.
There's some big businesses on El Molino, big fabrication.
So this is the
Because
current.
I know from Amador, Melendez from Amador to Picacho, that's already, no trucks allowed on that. Use Mesilla instead. So I'm surprised, I guess, I don't understand. I remember that there's a sign on Main Street that says no trucks turning onto Melendez. So I'm surprised that this is on the map.
Chair, Albert Casillas, if I recall, and if you were to pull up an aerial, you'll probably see that there's a couple of industrial businesses along Compress Road, south of Amador. So that's why I'm thinking that there's that need for having a truck route.
Oh, yeah, the EBID and El Paso Electric.
You have EBID on Melendez, and then there's a couple of contractors that are on the Compress side. So that's
Okay.
probably why they still need that loop through Compress, El Molino, and,
Okay, so it's-
and then back to Amador through Melendez.
As a practical matter, it'll probably just be used by local traffic then. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Okay.
What's your outreach plan for contacting the neighborhood residents who in that area?
As this was brought to us by the city of Las Cruces, this was brought from the neighborhood.
Sorry,
The neighborhood is actually requesting this because the city of Las Cruces, they contacted the Public Works Department to request this.
so people on El Molino requested it?
On that section of El Molino is mostly businesses.
Okay, but that
Between the
didn't answer my
compress.
question, though. Did the people who are residences on El Molino,
There are no residences on that section, sir.
oh,
The El Molino residences start on the other side of Melendez. Those are businesses on El Molino in that section.
okay, thank you.
Anybody else have comments? See, now we'll move on to the bike route map presentation.
And Ms. Katerina Provingi will be presenting that, Mr. Chair.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. First off, due to unforeseen circumstances last week, we were unable to provide a digital copy of the map ahead of time. So we apologize for that. Just before I start, I just want to state that. Okay, so this is a presentation on the changes that I've made since the last time, or we've made this since the last time that we've met. So first off, there were some complaints about the color scheme. It needed to be a bit more dramatic, so it was easier to read. We did go ahead and just dramatize the shading of it, so it's a bit, it stands out a bit more. So there was that. The Nmsu I-25 intersection, we went ahead and reviewed it, walked it, and made changes to that. It does consist of unbuffered bike lanes and multi-use paths. This is the southern end of Trevice, or where the Trevice multi-use path kind of starts by the university and extends from there. It does go under that bridge and crosses traffic with because there are two roundabouts there. It does cross and go alongside of those roundabouts. So that was noted as well. The Burrell College of Osteopathic Medicine, at first we believed it was a track. Upon further investigation and reviewing it, it is actually a multi-use trail.
So that's actually Sisbaro Park though, isn't it?
It's up, yes, and yes, it is. And it is also, and it was a multi-use trail, and there are entrances, because it connects to the bike lane along Trevice at this corner, and also down here along Wells. And yes, it is a multi-use path. So we went ahead and added that. Avenida de Mesilla, upon further review, it does disconnect just before Calle del Norte, and it's, I believe, Calle del Paso. And in between that little segment, it does disconnect, but then it reappears Calle del Norte and extends along Avenida de Mesilla. It is an unbuffered bike lane. And then when it reaches Union, it does change into a shoulder, and it goes a long ways until it hits Apodaca Road. And there it turns into a share the road, and that continues all the way down to the end of NM28. Main Street. Main Street, for the most part, has an unbuffered bike lane. It was brought to our attention at the last meeting, and we reviewed it again. There is a disconnect here. This is by El Camino Real. It disconnects here and doesn't appear again until basically where Trevice turns into Elks at this intersection. Along here, this is where you have a lot of businesses, and it's basically a turning lane for vehicles to get into those businesses. When we investigated it, there were no bike lane signs or any signage at all, and so that was marked. Okay, and then the multi-use path that goes along the Alameda Arroyo. There is signage. This is the multi-use path right here. It goes along the arroyo. There is signage by the railroad tracks. These are the railroad tracks. The signs say it is illegal to cross the railroad tracks. However, there is a bypass route along Hoagland where it is a share the road. And so it goes down Valley along Hoagland, and then it does pick up again at Doña Ana Road.
So, isn't that the Asphalt Channel Trail?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know that it was the Alameda Arroyo. I always thought it was just the Asphalt Channel.
Oh, no, yeah. It's no, it is the Alameda Arroyo, and I have heard it called that before as well. And it does connect and it goes south. But yes, there is signage that says you cannot cross the railroad tracks, but you are to go around it. We did investigate Dalrymple Road as a possible bypass route. Dalrymple Road is a very narrow two-lane road. There's no signage at all for a bicycle lane, share the road, any kind of way for a bicycle to, for any bicycle traffic to use Dalrymple. So yeah, no signage there.
Mr. Chair, I just would like to comment on that railroad crossing. That's on the outflow channel, right? Or the bike path. And I rode it last week for the first time. I got off my bike, my wife and I, we went across the railroad track, so we broke the law. Why don't you just why can't you cross it? Fill it in with concrete like you do any other railway crossing in town, and so the bicycle can go up and over, instead of having all these other exigency measures so that people can navigate that. Why build it if you're going to have a gap and you can't use it and continue on the path?
I
Mr.
guess
Chair,
one
do
of
you-
us can say.
Both of us know the answer. Do you want to give it, or do you want
The
me to?
railroad's been here first, and the railroad wins.
Oh, the
and
railroad,
says
okay.
no. The railroad has offered an aerial right-of-way, so we could build $1 million bridge to go over it. And I think I heard one of the city engineers say they would do a below the track also, so building a tunnel might be possible.
I never heard that
How
one.
many people you think get off their bike and turn around in 180 degrees and go back the other way versus just walking their bike over the railroad
It
track?
depends on if BNSF railroad police is there, then they will.
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment? This is Jim Wilcox. I would suggest this become something to be put on an agenda at some future item. I don't think this really covers the development of this map at this time.
Well, yeah,
But-
I don't think, there's no
Excuse
point
me,
in
I
doing
have
that.
it. Can I finish, please? Thank you. So I hear what you're saying, and I think maybe later some people could could come up with some ideas we could discuss. But right now, I think we're focused more on the map. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please continue.
Okay. So it was pointed out to us at our last meeting that the Las Cruces Dam Trail was missing. We went ahead and locked it, investigated it, and added it to our map. So now it is present. So we also wanted to add, with the bike lane map, we also wanted to add a back of map content where we have some useful information. It'll be like a pamphlet where it's folded up and whatnot. So I know some parts are different directions, but there's a reason for that. I will go over each section so you don't have to turn your heads. Okay, so we went ahead and added the types of bicycle facilities. We did go over all 5 categories that were discussed at the previous meeting, along with a short description to identify those. We also went ahead and added the statistics on the type and mileage of each bicycle facility within our area.
So while we're on this, on the buffered bike lane, go up to University and take the picture. This is Alameda. I was going to comment on this later, but we did a bike training with the bus drivers, and one of the comments from the bus drivers is essentially, what the hell is this? Where is the bike lane? So show a buffered bike lane that actually has the diagonals, which is one of the university someplace that'll show that.
Correct, yeah. When we were investigating these, some buffered bike lanes had the cross-hatching and some did not. But essentially, they all had the same concept where there was some kind of space between.
Right, I would recommend you add one that has the hashing to really show that it is a buffered bike lane.
Oh,
But, okay, thank you.
that's not a bad idea. Okay, so we have the type of bicycle facilities and then the mileage. We also have the New Mexico bicycle traffic regulations. These are regulations from the state. Nmsu also provides this exact same type of information to their bicycle community. And so we went ahead and added those. This is basically, this is advice to cyclists. This was reviewed and approved by our legal team. This is just obviously advice to cyclists on safety, protocol, and whatnot.
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment? Sorry, Ms. Katerina. It's also legal for hand use signals that right turn straight out. So you've got 3 turns there, the right turn with the left arm up, but it's also illegal it is legal in the state of New Mexico to have a right turn with a straight arm out. So I think maybe adding that in.
One more time, can you repeat that? So it's
Yeah, so you put your arm out straight, that's a right turn.
Okay.
That's a legal right turn, so it needs to be added in as a 4th turn signal. So you have a right
hand.
So we have
Using the right hand to go right.
Okay, so we have this one.
You have left hand
That's the
turning
left
left.
hand.
And
So swap that around 180 degrees, and that's
I
the
see.
right hand.
Okay,
And that is explicitly in the Las Cruces ordinances. It's in the New Mexico Driver's Manual. It may not be in the state ordinances, but it is in the New Mexico Driver's Manual.
okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and review those pictures. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment? It says make eye contact with drivers, and I think that's it's great advice. It's problematic though because there's heavily tinted windows in this area, and I don't know what the law is, but many times you really can't do that. So that's just a sort of a side note about trying to follow that particular advice. It's good advice, but it may not be possible to do.
Right. I guess whenever possible. Okay. We also provided useful resources should a cyclist come across, or anyone who's using a multi-use path as well, come across any kind of incident where they need to call some kind of emergency service, maybe Parks and Rec, the fire department. We also have El Paso Electric listed on here as well. These are just some useful phone numbers that they can have. And plus, I mean, if you come across an incident, someone might panic and they won't know what to do. Providing that list might help them kind of determine how they can report it and it can be resolved successfully.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Frankie, can I add another comment in here? I had met with Tony Trevino, and he said that there was in Public Works, and that there's a number that's, I think it's 311, that you can report any incidences. Just verify that number before printing it. But there's a number, it's a 3-digit number that you can call within the city to report any issues and problems with Public Works. And then I think that, and there may be a separate one that you can report potholes and any uneven surfaces or things that need to be addressed within the city. So I would say that that would be a primary one as a useful resource for cyclists.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair, I have a comment also. Could you go back to the previous safety slide? And amen to the potholes. Is there one like a beware of cars overtaking a bicyclist and turning right and cutting the bicyclist off? Because I've known some people that have had accidents. In my own experiences, that is a primary route to having a nice way to have an accident, or a high probability way to have an accident.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Waller, the fourth one on the left column, more or less
Okay, did I miss it?
covers that.
Yeah, that one. Okay, yeah, that one. Got it. Okay, just want to make sure it's on there. Thank you.
Mr.
Thanks for
Chair,
pointing that out. Sorry I missed it.
Andrew Bencomo, are we asking questions now, or is she going to finish her presentation first?
I guess we're picking on her as we go through.
I'm taking notes. I'm just wanting to know if I should ask now, or I'm taking notes, or I should wait. Maybe we wait for her to finish.
Well, if you've got a whole bunch on different aspects,
I'll wait.
want to wait, go back over it?
Okay, thank you.
You want to finish up?
We're almost done.
presentation and
We're
then we'll-
almost done, actually. So advice to cyclists, useful resources, and that was literally it. So I'll stand for questions, comments.
Okay, I get to be the chair, so I get to ask first. On your useful resources, what about the railroad? A number for contacting them, because I've come across from time to time where the crossing is acting weirdly. Is that something you could add? Something you could look at maybe.
Oh, you mean the crossing signals, if they're,
Right. A BNSF contact information for issues with railroad crossings.
If someone has that, we would love to have it.
They've got it posted on their signs. If you go
Oh, do they?
to
Well, we'll have to go look at their signs then.
because I've called them once on that, so they've got an 800 number.
I was not aware. Our efforts to contact the railroad in the past have always met with failure, so.
Right. No comment. What's the difference between the police department number and the central dispatch number, the non-emergency number? They are different numbers. I wasn't aware of this other number.
Mr. Chair, the 528-3473 is to fire headquarters directly.
But the police department then?
That
goes
one,
Some administrative person at the police department, I guess?
that is a direct to probably their east side command.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I actually don't know the answer to that question, but I would presume that Mr. Bencomo was probably correct. But we'll look into where the origin of those numbers.
Okay, because I've always heard, I've only ever seen the central dispatch number, so that's, anybody else have it? Mr. Bencomo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the utilities dispatch number at the very top says 24-hour emergency service. That is actually utilities dispatch. So maybe clarify that. That sounds more like all emergency services, but it is utilities dispatch specifically for like water, gas issues, things like that.
okay, so just.
So maybe clarify
Yeah,
that.
it's utilities.
And then with George's point, I would say police and fire and non-emergency could probably all be one item. 5260795 is the service number for any of those services. If you prefer to do it that way, just. suggestion. And then the 311 that Ms. Curry brought up, that is, there's an online you can do. It's called Ask the City, but it's also the 311. And you can put a written issue in there, or you can call 311 and put information there. It is for things like potholes. I've done requests where there are sidewalks that are inaccessible as far as like for ADA accessibility, and I've reported those, and the city has gone out and redone the curbs there and things like that. So it is a pretty much one-size-fits-all 311, so it's a very good, that's a great item to have on that information. And that's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I had one other comment. You have the state ordinances, but we do have our vulnerable user ordinances for the city. So I wondered.
Yes, I was having difficulty finding room for that.
Right.
So,
I'll send it to you.
okay. And, no, not finding them, finding room on the
Yeah,
back of
it's
the
a
map.
question of textual ability to fit all the matter onto the
Right.
the page. We do have a space limitation, and it does need to be readable to the end user, so cuts have to be made.
Since this is a city, well, it's an MPO, so it's covered.
Mr. Chair, perhaps just the link to where we can find those ordinances would be on the form, and that would reduce it quite a bit.
We could do that, or apologize, Mr. Chair, Mr. Bencomo, we could do that. This especially, when we do the digital version, this is not going to appear the same way, this information. So we probably on the digital version can have more fuller treatment. This is specifically targeted. We are intending to have a print version. We know that a lot of people cycle with their phones, but not everybody does. We want to have accommodation. We want to have something that's kind of available. And I will also say that Visit Las Cruces is very interested in having a hard copy of the map. So we are looking to have a printed version of this map. So we do have space constraints that we're dealing with. And this slide is reflective of the intention for the printed version, the hard copy version.
Because we do have better ordinances in the city with regard to vulnerable user passing than the state statute allows. Okay. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to make a comment to Ms. Fringy. I think you did an amazing job. Thank you for taking our feedback and going out and doing the research and changing the colors. And I think this is exactly what I think of the BPAC as being able to be a community resource of people who know things on the street, but being able to give it to you to take it in. So just kudos to you. I think you did an amazing job. Looks great.
Thank you.
So will there be an electronic version or PDF that could be shared? So when that happens, maybe just ask staff to send it out?
Mr. Chair, we're going to have a parade when this map is done, so everyone is going to know. But I do want, yes, a bike parade, exactly. Good shot. Ms. Provingi didn't, or at least I missed it if she did. We do have a version of the map available, so after the meeting, whoever wants to come over and actually get their hands on it and take a look at the changes, please feel free to do so.
And we have both the bicycle map and the back of map content, so we printed them out nice and big. And then I brought markers, of course, so if you want to mark it all up, go for it.
Okay, great. So next we have the local projects update. So yeah, the comment to list all the entities makes it easier for me. So Nmsu is absent. Town of Messina?
I hate to take up any more time. The Calle del Norte Trail, the LGTPF 2019 trail's under construction. So that's good. A Mountain was the low bidder, and anticipate the completion by the end of the summer. The section that we have in that bid package for tying the Lyrona Trail to the Calle del Norte Trail is still in trouble. IBWC's had our package for 11 months. And they've had the last set of comments about 75 days. So fortunately, we were able to get an extension on that project, and we still have some time, but I'm not confident we're going to actually end up building that section. We have a backup plan to renovate the Mesilla lateral crossing so we can utilize the funds still. But yeah, so if you know anybody, they're a hard one. Make EBID look like angels.
It's an international commission.
No, I don't have anything further.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most anticipated chunk of trail in the entire MPO area.
That makes me feel great.
Doña Ana County, do you have any updates?
Just one quick comment. That Elks Trail, the multi-use trail from, it used to be Columbia to Doña Ana School Road, it's set to start construction in the first quarter of 2023.
Okay, thank you. City of Las Cruces.
This is Daniel Balderrama with the City of Las Cruces. Our local projects, we have Green Paint, the Green Paint Bike Lane project. That started Monday, July 18th, and it's going to end Thursday, July 21st. This project is has 3 locations, Hadley, between Solano to Walnut, and we also have Nevada between Walnut to Travis, and also on Walnut between Nevada to Zambrano. And also our the Gold Bond Trail, it's under substantial completion on all of the 3 trails, and it's about 99% completed. The updated completion date is the 6th of September, 2022. Also to add the Alameda bike lane, that has also been completed. Markings have been painted along the trail. That's it, sir.
Okay. Yeah, maybe you've heard my comment earlier about the Alameda north of Picacho, where it's marked as a buffered bike lane, but that's confusing to drivers. And if it's a professional driver that's saying this, maybe city engineering staff can reevaluate and look at doing some sort of diagonal markings to delineate the buffered portion of that. Do you know when the University Avenue reconstruction or repaving project, when that will start?
It's under the review process. I know they did utility works, so it's just starting off. The start date for that, I do not have it available, but I can get it for you.
Okay. And there's one other project that is actually, they had some public input during our meeting, the Madrid Avenue extension. Do you know anything more than that?
No, sir, I do not. I will get some more.
Okay, well, I assume it's extending, well, it's described, I think, from Evelyn to Travis through that area where it narrows down because of the right-of-way issues and everything there. So I'm hoping that if they do that project, that the right-of-way will be acquired so that the width of Madrid can be extended all the way through up to Travis and do that. So Nmdot project updates.
Harold Love, Nmdot. Got a couple of projects to report on. I-25 milepost 14 to the 24. That mill and fill project is still ongoing and should be finishing up hopefully by next month. I-25 milepost 1.7 to 3.4. That's basically right before University Avenue and just past Loman Interchange. We're doing a pavement preservation project. It's going to be night work to upgrade the pavement in that section. And then Stern Drive, milepost 4 to 6, our forces are doing erosion control work. And that's all I have.
Okay, I had a question that maybe you can answer, or maybe you can come back sometime. The US 70, there's a pavement preservation from, well, came through the STIP for the entire distance of US 70. I think we were talking about the part on the east side as part of the presentation today, but on the west side from, like from Morton Lane up to the airport turnoff, will that be edge to edge when they do that? Mostly I'm thinking about, well, I rode up there and the shoulder's not in the greatest shape, and there's the rumble strips in that area too. So I was wondering if we get a nice smooth shoulder as part of that project.
Yes.
Thank you. Go.
Oh.
I already heard the yes. So.
Andreas Linen, Nmdot for the record. The same type of restrictions to funding is applying for replacement of rumble strips are not part of the earmark. It's a fog seal, a crack seal, a microsurfacing, and replacement.
So it's only on the main roadway then, it's not affecting the
same
shoulders?
funding is used for the.
So it's not, there's no shoulder improvement as part of that?
No, sir. We have no geometric changes. We are very happy that we are allowed to change the striping surface appearance and include some improvements.
Right. Well, I'm on the east, on the west side is the one I'm talking about, up to the airport.
Yeah, over there, we're only doing microsurfacing and crack sealing.
So that's only going to be in the main line, the 24-foot.
Even if it goes from shoulder to shoulder, it is just a thin surface like a spray. It's not going to change the fatigue surface. Surface conditional microsurfacing, yes. But a fog seal and crack seal in the area will not address your concerns.
Think about a project that adds the bike lanes all the way up to the airport road.
As I said, we are open for all discussion, and we're always happy to partner up with whoever we can to improve the system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the other comment, I was on Main Street through the area where the last Spitz intersection, Three Crosses Spitz intersection, the transition from the asphalt to the concrete, we're getting that asphalt is bumping up, so there's a big bump when you ride across that in the shoulder area. So maybe, I know maintenance has looked at that for other areas. I think it's been like 3 years or better that project's been open, and we're just getting some of that asphalt getting pushed up. So if you were really going down that road way fast in the bike lane, it could be a hazard. So maybe just bring that to attention to the maintenance.
Will do.
Staff comments.
Mr. Chair, MPO staff does not have any updates this evening.
Okay, committee member updates. I guess I just wanted to comment that I was very saddened to see the obituary for Jerry Cordova. He was a city engineer that gave us some great projects, and he needed a longer retirement, so I was very saddened to see that. Any other committee members? Ashley?
Mr. Chair, yes, thank you very much. I second that. Condolences to his family. I just wanted to also add a couple things. School starts tomorrow for kindergarten, 6th grade and 9th grade, and it starts on Thursday for the rest of everybody. Safe Routes to School programming starts the following week at 17 of our schools. And then we've got a few others that are going to be joining just in the next week or two beyond that. I also just second the confusion in the buffered paint striping on Alameda. I've also heard it from LCPS staff saying that they thought that was parking, and then that little skinny buffer was actually the bike lane, and they were like, wait, what? This is a marked parking area. So I think just putting in that striping and putting in some bike lane markings would be very helpful there as well. And I do have a little contact at the IBWC, so Rod, we can get in touch after the meeting and see if we can put a word in to maybe get that project moved along a little bit faster. And then the other thing is George and I are going to be teaching a smart cycling class on August 27th. And Robert Messenger has coordinated with us at the city to host the class. It's going to be a hybrid class. I think it's a 9-hour class. So there'll be a portion of it that's online ahead of time. And then the rest of it will be on the bike. This is the preparation class for the league cycling instructor class that will take place in Albuquerque. I believe it's the second, 3rd, and 4th of December. So that's a requirement to do that. So if anybody is interested in becoming a league cycling instructor or just wants to know more about how to ride safely on the roads, we haven't taught a class like this in a couple years. So please just speak to either George or Robert, and we can get you information to sign up for that. That's it. Thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Andrew?
Andrew Bencomo. A question for Messia, where the trail, the new section of trail is going to start. Are there going to be any crossing signage, anything for transition from one side to the other?
On Calle del Norte?
Yes, yeah.
Paisano? Yeah. Yeah, there's a pretty significant crosswalk and signage.
So there's going to be some signage there. Is the speed limit going to remain the same in that area?
Speed limit stays the same.
Okay. All right, thank you. And also, for the city of Las Cruces, the trails, when they are completed, is there any that you maybe know of, maybe you don't know, I'm not sure, any plans for any kind of ribbon cutting event, something to kind of celebrate that happening?
No, sir, not that I'm aware of. There's
Okay.
no cutting ribbon cutting.
Okay, thanks. And then another for the city of Las Cruces also. A while back, I had online listened to a presentation for, it's the Walnut Madrid kind of bike routing through that area there. What is the status of that project? Do you happen to know?
Walnut Madrid.
Yeah, it was going to be like a bike routing down Walnut through Kilmer and then up. We changed, the route was changed when George and I actually gave some input to, I can't remember what street, and then down Evelyn to Madrid. Do you happen to know? If not, that's fine.
I don't, but I can get you the status for.
Okay, thank you.
The last time I heard anything about it was before they were going to have bids, so, and I haven't heard if bids were successful or what happened with bids, but they had been putting it out to bid.
Okay.
But I have no idea if the bid was successful.
Thank you. And then my last question is for Ms. Curry. The smart cycling class, is there a limit on numbers for that class to get information out?
Yes, there will be a limit just for safety, for us to be able to be out on the road. I'm kind of thinking 12 or 15 or somewhere like that. George and I'll have to look at the league.
It might depend on if
requests.
we get, how many instructors we have. If it's
Yeah.
only Ashley and myself, it might just be 10. If we get
Yeah,
somebody
but
else, we might
first
be able
come,
to do 15.
first served, and so far you're number one, so.
Okay. So if we can get that information, then we can put it out.
Yeah, this is just hot off the press. I just wanted to take this opportunity because by the time we meet next time, it'll be too late.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other committee members? Well, now we have public comment. Anyone from the public wish to please come up to the microphone, give us your name and
My name is Jeff Howie, and I live in the county on the north side of town. I'm an avid cyclist. I ride between 400 and 600 miles on my bike around this whole area. The comments I had were, please extend all the way up 70 on the two delineations. Go all the way up to Baylor Canyon with the same markings. So that is an avid route for many of us. As a request, trail crossings need to be repainted on the trail around town. They're very poor, and you can't even see them most of the time. So especially the trail that, goes around town. And last but not least, is there any plans to repave University from Travis to South Main?
actually, yes, that is one project that I was asking about. The city is going to do a pavement preservation from Travis to just about to Main. It's actually the Turrentine is the extent of the project. They're going to do a utility replacement in that Part of it's already been done as an emergency project, but in general, from Turrentine to Trevice, they're going to do utilities and also do a pavement preservation. So they're going to do a mill, take it down, and then replace the surface.
That's good news.
So just, the complaint is that that's all they're doing. And so they need to also look at doing other safety improvements, perhaps at the intersections. And that's input that the city has heard about.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may address that also, there will not, my understanding, and the chair can correct me if I got it wrong, there will not be any additional bicycle facilities. It did not trigger additional bicycle facilities on that street, such as a bike lane.
Sure, on University.
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't asking for that.
Okay. Just want to let you know.
But thank you.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? See none, go to adjournment. Our motion to adjourn.
Ashley Curry, so moved.
Without objection, we're adjourned. Thank you.